Good afternoon. I'm Ken Weinstein. I am Japan Chair here at Hudson Institute, and I want to welcome everyone to today's Japan Chair event. Japanese automakers driving investment in the U.S. and strengthening bilateral ties. The U.S.-Japan economic relationship is stronger and more consequential today than ever before, as affirmed by Prime Minister Kishida's official visit back in April and the visit this week to Washington, D.C. of Minister of Economy, Trade, and Industry Ken Saito for the Select USA conference and also for a trilateral with Secretary of Commerce Ramundo and his Korean counterpart METI Minister An. The Japanese auto industry, which has manufactured cars in the United States since the early 1980s, is central to this commitment to economic partnership, innovation, progress, workforce development, and enhancing communities across the U.S. And we're delighted that the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association is releasing its new report today, which on impact of the Japan auto industry in the U.S., Japan-owned auto industry in the U.S. And I'm delighted to see that we have an absolutely full house for this report released today, which highlights why Japanese industry is good for the United States, why it enhances the quality of life in the U.S. through good quality jobs, lifelong learning, strengthen communities, all of which strengthen the bonds between the United States and Japan. Now, as we get underway, I'm delighted to be able first to introduce the Japanese Embassy's Minister for Economic Trade and Industry, Hideaki Fujisawa. Minister Fujisawa is a graduate not just of Todai, the University of Tokyo, but also the University of Michigan, where he did a master's in applied economics. He joined METI, then the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, in 1996, and has held numerous key positions at METI ever since, rising to be the director of the Economic and Social Policy Office and the Economic and Industrial Policy Bureau, director of the Asia Pacific Division, and also finally becoming director of Policy Planning and Coordination Division before coming here to Washington as a minister. We're delighted to welcome Minister Fujisawa, a friend of Hudson Institute, to open up with a few remarks. Minister Fujisawa, please. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. So it is a great honor to be here today and to have the opportunity to speak with you all at this event. My name is Hideaki Fujisawa, Economic Minister at the Embassy of Japan. I'd like to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to the Hudson Institute for inviting me to such a fantastic event. Until just a few hours ago, Minister Ken Saito from METI, my home ministry, was visiting this here in Washington, D.C. Minister Saito, who is a different Ken from Hudson Japan Chair, was my first boss right after I joined METI. So he's like a mentor to me. So I personally found the past 3 days to be a little hectic. It was a fruitful visit. Yesterday, Minister Saito joined the first session of the U.S.-Japan-Korea Commerce and Industry Ministerial Meeting, which was established during the U.S.-Japan-Korea Summit held at Camp David last year. During yesterday's meeting, the three commercial leadership discussed how to work together on policy issues such as supply chain resilience, as well as promotion and the protection of critical emerging technologies. 2 years ago, the US and Japan launched the Economic 2+2 meeting to frankly exchange views on basic strategies in the economic field. The central theme of these meetings is to ensure economic security. For a long time, METI sought to promote 2 key points. One, free competition through deregulation, and the second one is a free trade through the WTO and free trade agreements. However, since then, there has been a shift in the global trends. First, the COVID-19 pandemic caused a massive disruption of the global supply chain. Then Russia's invasion to Ukraine had an adverse effect on the global economy and energy security. And finally, as the digitalization and technological innovation continue, security threats have diversified. Considering these various challenges, it is no longer possible to separate economic activities from national security. In order to enhance the policy-making system on economic security, METI is establishing a new Bureau of Trade Economic Security on July 1st. To ensure economic security, 3 Ps are essential. 1, promotion of emerging technologies. 2, protection to address the risk of unintended technology leakage. And 3, partnership with like-minded countries. However, now these 3 can be achieved without collaboration with private companies. After the trilateral meeting, business organizations from the 3 countries held a dialogue yesterday to discuss what role the private sector should play. We expect the public-private dialogue, known as track 1.5, to become increasingly beneficial. This April, Prime Minister Kishida made the first state visit to the United States in 9 years, shedding light on the importance of our bilateral relations. In an address to Congress, he stated that Japan is a global partner of the United States. This message was received positively by lawmakers of both parties. I believe that this was the moment when the U.S.-Japan relationship entered a new era. We must acknowledge that never before have the role of private sector been so emphasized at the U.S.-Japan leaders meeting. Leaders welcome the fact that Japan has been the top 40 investor in the United States for 4 consecutive years, with nearly $800 billion in foreign direct investment, just doubled in the last decade. Additionally, Japanese companies employ nearly 1 million Americans across the country. The fact sheet of leaders of the US and Japan welcomes major commercial deals, including Microsoft's $2.9 billion investment in Japan on AI and cloud infrastructure, and the Toyota's recent $8 billion investment in battery production. Following the summit meeting, Prime Minister Kishida took a trip to North Carolina, where he visited the construction sites of Toyota battery plant and the Honda Jet manufacturing plants. These projects are examples of symbolic investments for the future. As I'm involved in the policy making that deepens our bilateral relations, I'd like to make 3 points regarding the potential of business by private sectors. The first point is the contribution of Japanese companies to local economies in the United States. In the 80s and 90s, the US and Japan experienced a fierce trade war. The auto industry, the main topic of this today's event, faced a harsh criticism as expanded exposed sharply to the US market. Since then, however, Japanese automakers have made utmost effort to contribute to the local US economy by establishing production facilities throughout the US. As a result, the cumulative investment by Japanese automakers have reached $61.6 billion, as published, by JAMA, right? In addition, Japanese companies have been eager to contribute to local communities and develop human capital in pursuit of becoming good corporate citizens. The number of jobs created by Japanese automakers, including dealers, suppliers, and other supporting jobs, has reached 2.2 million. Now, the leaders of both countries are emphasizing the importance of both Japanese companies doing business in the United States as an essential piece of Japan-US relationship. It is a world away from the days of trade wars. Second point is a complementary relationship between Japan and US. Japanese companies have excellent manufacturing technologies and a skill at providing consumers with new products and services that utilize new technologies and integrate them into society. In other words, Japanese companies with customization capability can be promising partners that can play a complementary role for US industries, which has world-class innovation capability. This is a win-win situation between the two countries' businesses. With Japan and US strengthening policies to encourage investment in semiconductors and clean tech, these complementary alliances between Japanese and US companies have the potential to expand into a variety of areas. The final point is to build bridges to Asia. Since the 90s, Japanese companies have been moving their production bases to other Asian countries. As a result, Japanese companies have built trusting relationships in these countries thanks to their emphasis on developing local human resources and contributing to the economic development of these countries. The Asian region is also a growth center for the future, a manufacturing basis and a market with great potential for US companies. For example, expanding solution businesses that utilize clean tech and digital technologies to solve social challenges will provide great business opportunities for Japanese and US companies. Last but not least, I'd like to touch upon the potential of Japanese economy. Japan has experienced a long period of slow growth, known as the lost decades, and is also facing a declining population. However, we are finally seeking a break from a deflationary economy with rising wages. We are also strengthening our domestic manufacturing base for strategic goods such as semiconductors and batteries. Japanese corporate executives are also turning to positive about investing for the future. The Japanese government sees this as its chance to reinvigorate the Japanese economy and is making its utmost efforts. We look forward to the focus of the private sector in Japan as a potential investment destination. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister Fujisawa. Very enlightening set of remarks. And now delighted to introduce Anita Rajan, who is the General Director of JAMA USA, the Japanese Auto Manufacturers Association, where she leads U.S. public and government relations, outreach to Congress, U.S. government agencies, the media, and various stakeholders. She came to JAMA, and I have to say, growing up in a medical family, I think of the Journal of the American Medical Association when I think of JAMA. So she spent nearly 2 decades at Mitsubishi Motors Research and Development of America, MRDA, in the government and regulatory affairs areas, and most recently served as manager of government affairs for MRDA's Government and Industry Relations Department. She has an MA in International Commerce from George Mason and a bachelor's in Foreign Service, focused on international politics from the Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, a place where I used to teach ages ago. So delighted by that. And Anita's going to unveil JAMA's new report and then engage in dialogue with my Japan Chair colleague, Japan Chair fellow Dr. Will Chou, about its findings. So welcome, Anita.
Thank you, Ken, for the introduction and for hosting us here today. Minister Fujisawa, thank you for the insightful remarks. The U.S.-Japan economic partnership continues to grow strong day by day. And I'm proud to represent Japanese brand automakers' long-standing role in support of this important and historic partnership. Well, I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you all for joining us in the room today and online as I present you with the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association, JAMA as we call it, USA's 2024 Impact Report entitled The Way We Work. Every year, we take a look at various data points from our members' U.S. investments and add context to these facts and figures by looking deeper at how Americans' lives and careers are touched, and many times further by the scores of opportunities these investments support. This goes to the heart of what good quality foreign direct investment means, the betterment of the U.S. economy, society, and automotive industry. The report details the work put into realizing the benefits and opportunities of good quality FDI. By the numbers, it is clear that JAMA members continue to do the important work of providing steadily increasing investment over 40-plus years in automotive manufacturing, research and development, R&D, and design in the United States. Our members are major job creators across the country, and more than 2.2 million U.S. jobs are supported by Japanese brand automakers' U.S. production facilities, R&D and design centers, headquarters, sales and distribution, and dealer networks. As of 2023, Japanese brand automakers increased their cumulative manufacturing investment to $61.6 billion, and direct employment rose to over 109,000. Additionally, cumulative R&D capital investments since 1977 have reached $4.4 billion. These numbers illustrate a deep and sustained prioritization and commitment to American workers, consumers, and broader society. In our report, we also showcase what good quality foreign direct investment looks like across 27 states to further illustrate the impactful work of our members' U.S. organizations. These states are where Japanese brand automakers' 24 manufacturing plants and 45 R&D and design facilities and a multitude of distribution centers have flourished, and their legacies are being written. Historically, whenever these automakers have entered into communities to provide significant investments, it has involved thoughtful efforts to reach out and partner with community stakeholders. In each instance, the emphasis has been placed on respecting local voices and preserving and enriching the areas which have welcomed these automakers. These are heartwarming stories, thanks to Japanese brand automakers' consistent financial support and hours of dedication. In fact, since 1957, these automakers have provided over $1 billion in charitable contributions, including $150 million in 2023 alone. Japanese brand automakers are active members in the communities surrounding their U.S. facilities, with a focus on building roots for the long term. Because of the way Japanese brand automakers work, they have naturally become a part of the American landscape. While JAMA members' operations in the U.S. include substantial investments in training its own workforce, the work actually goes beyond the factory floor and toward helping individuals throughout the workforce pipeline identify and realize their potential. These efforts start as early as kindergarten and run through high school, post-secondary education, including technical and community colleges, and four-year universities. Ultimately, the work to build meaningful jobs and enduring careers strengthens U.S. competitiveness and makes a positive impact on U.S. society through inspiration, mentorship, and hands-on training. Importantly, the work that Japanese brand automakers do in their R&D and design and other corporate facilities drives innovation in the areas of sustainability, safety, mobility, and even reimagining the customer experience. Much of the work these automakers do involve long-term vision and a sustained commitment, which is exactly the approach that they take on as the transition to electrified vehicles advances. Japanese brand automakers' efforts to lean into this transition are exemplified by the $30 billion in electrification investments and commitments made since 2017. This is good quality FDI at work today and into the future. Some of the data I referenced is provided in the brochure available to those in the room, and an electronic copy of the impact report and many examples of this good quality FDI that I can't stop talking about is located on our microsite at jamainamerican.org. When you visit the site, take a look at some of the places that I have had the opportunity to visit and experience, where our members' U.S. manufacturing stories started. Places like Marysville, Ohio, Smyrna, Tennessee, Georgetown, Kentucky, Lafayette, Indiana, Huntsville, Alabama, and explore how Japanese brand automakers are shaping a bright future for Americans through strengthening communities, building careers, and driving excellence. It's a great story, I promise. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all for joining us here today in person, and also for our online viewers. Welcome to this wonderful event here at the Hudson Institute. I'm William Chou. I'm a Japan Chair Fellow here at Hudson, and also someone who has done plenty of research on the Japanese automotive industry in the United States. Anita, thank you so much for your wonderful remarks describing the ways in which Japanese branded automakers have invested in the United States, and this sort of their long-term sustained approach towards investing in American industry, communities, and also people. And certainly, I think what really stands out from your report really is the sort of the person-to-person engagements that you guys have tried to foster, which also came out during Prime Minister Kishida's comments during his speech to Congress back in April. So I'd like to, it's a wonderful report. I hope everyone gets a chance to take a look at it. Obviously, the brochure doesn't do the full report justice, so please look at the full report. Having the opportunity to read it, it would be great if we can sort of have, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a few questions about the report. And certainly later on, I hope to open it up to the broader audience. So I guess, Anita, I'm just working off your comments. I think here's the question. How do Japanese automakers view the U.S. market, right? Do they see it as a growing, expanding one? How does it compare to other markets around the world, which Minister Fujisawa mentioned earlier about the growing markets in Asia? How do the two markets compare? What is distinct about the U.S. market?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this chat. So yes, the U.S. is a growing market, along with other markets globally, like we heard, China, India, Southeast Asia. The U.S. remains an important market for our members. It's a unique one. It's incredibly resilient. After recovering after supply chain shocks here, and despite high transaction prices over recent years, consumer demand remains steady and it's increasing. This market is also highly competitive, and it's incredibly diversified, and there's a variety of consumer demands. This is why many of our members approach this market in a build where you sell mentality. And this is also why Japanese brand automakers place a high priority in understanding the U.S. consumer and designing vehicles that really meet all of their needs. So.
Terrific. Just as a quick follow-up to what Minister Fujisawa had mentioned, he mentioned a little bit about the connections between sort of the Asian market and the U.S. market. Now, I don't know if there might be an opportunity to sort of talk a little bit more about that, or maybe that if you can talk about that. Are there any connections between the U.S. market and, say, the Asian market?
Well, certainly our members are, they build in Asia, they export to Asia. So, but really the what automakers work here is really focused on the U.S. consumer. It's a very distinct consumer. The vehicles are very different. For anybody who has traveled over to Asia, I think it's very evident. So.
Okay. Well, I think with regards to that sort of the distinctiveness of the U.S. market that you mentioned, and also the highly competitive nature of the U.S. market, I guess that really brings up the question of, essentially, I think you talked about a little bit about the sustainability of the market and the transition to sort of new modes of mobility, right? So I guess. As EVs, use less labor and also fewer parts in traditional internal combustion engine cars. How are Japanese automakers in the U.S. adapting to the challenges and opportunities, particularly with regards to the regulations of this generational transition to electrification?
So I think the key word is transition, right? So I think the word is synonymous with change, and change means new frontiers and possibilities, but it's also daunting. But there's been a lot of change in the automotive industry in over the last 40 plus years, and as difficult as it's been at times, there's always been opportunities to grow and to innovate. So when we see that our members are investing and committing $30 billion into the transition to electrified vehicles since 2017, we certainly hear opportunity. So, for example, JAMA members manufacturing or planning to manufacture here electrified vehicles, they're, for example, integrating knowledge of software, robotics, and electrical engineering, training and furthering electromechanical and mechatronics technician skills, along with teaching proper safety precautions when working with or near high voltage components. When I've spoken to members, that's one that keeps coming up. This training is incredibly important. Sure. And so also when you introduce new lines into factories to accommodate a mix of internal combustion engines, so ICE vehicles, and electrified vehicle production, you're also placing more demands on industrial maintenance technicians, of which there's a shortage in the industry too. So there are a lot of opportunities there with new and different jobs. And then also I do want to highlight two of our members in terms of expansion and further opportunity. Honda is leveraging their automotive legacy. I mentioned Marysville, Ohio in my opening remarks. And they're building an EV hub. So what that means is this includes transforming an engine plant to making battery cases that will be combined with battery modules coming from a joint venture with LG. And then they will build the EVs at existing vehicle manufacturing facilities. So tried to paint that hub. All the while, they will maintain employment stability at existing facilities, increase jobs by 300, and project 2,200 jobs through the JV. So, and they've also designed flexibility to produce ICE vehicles and EVs on the same line, so that they can meet the shifting consumer demand. So that's just an example, one example about this transition and then further opportunity. Another example is Toyota. They're steadily working to bring a new automotive battery plant online in 2025 in Liberty, North Carolina. So they have a planned employment level of 5,100 jobs. Those jobs will support, this is a massive factory that's about to be opened, 14 production lines, including 4 supporting battery production for hybrid electric vehicles and 10 supporting battery production for BEVs and PHEVs. Many of these batteries will be headed to the Toyota's Georgetown manufacturing facility, which I also mentioned in the opening remarks, where the company, in addition to introducing a battery pack assembly line to the facility, the company will begin production of its first U.S. assembled battery electric vehicle. And this is important, with a commitment to retain 700 full-time workers during this transition. So this really underscores the company's focus on long-term job stability. So I just want to underscore, and when we're talking about transition and change, the opportunities are really in the details.
Well, that's really great, and I'm so excited that you took the opportunity to give a shout out to Marysville.
Yeah.
Speaking as someone who got his PhD from Ohio State, I've definitely been to the Marysville plant several times. So it's great. And if well, I guess Morgan's not here, but we have a former Miss Ohio State homecoming queen here at Hudson. So if Morgan were here, I would definitely shout her out. So I'm really glad that you talked about the sort of the workforce aspect of it, because I think that's such a predominant issue that we see keep coming up, both from a national security standpoint as well as sort of a larger discussion about reindustrializing America and also issues of our trade and whatnot. So I really want to follow up on that workforce thing, right? So we oftentimes hear about how the United States does not have the workforce to sustain its broader ambitions, be it in national security industries like shipbuilding or critical technological industries like semiconductors, right? What role do Japanese automakers have to play when it comes to workforce concerns within the automotive sector? And is there any spillover effects to other sectors?
Sure. Japanese brand automakers definitely have a role, and they've been fulfilling this role for years throughout their workforce pipeline. And through some examples I'll point out, they're fulfilling these roles not only for themselves, for their own facilities, for the larger automotive industry, but also for other advanced manufacturing needs. So some examples, and they really take a long-term approach, and you'll see that through here. For example, the Toyota USA Foundation, their program is called Driving Possibilities. It's a really unique $110 million career readiness and community engagement initiative. It's been launched in Indiana, Alabama, Michigan, Kentucky, Arizona, and North Carolina. And it reaches a diverse, underserved population via an innovative project-based STEM curriculum, and coupling that with professional teacher development and community-based service coordination. So what that last one also means is also wraparound services sometimes in areas that need it in terms of food and transportation. Now, inspiration is also something I think I mentioned in my opening remarks too. We need that here because there is still a stigma for younger people to enter into manufacturing. So Honda is inspiring the future generations to join the advanced manufacturing. For example, last October, Honda hosted Manufacturing Day events, which included 1,600 students from 40 different schools in Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, Ohio, and the Carolinas. Also last year, Honda, along with the Manufacturing Institute, they brought the Creators Wanted program to Central Ohio, and it's really to showcase hands-on and about career opportunities, but also the technologies that are used in modern manufacturing. So really just kind of, I guess, the phrase of moving the curtain and showing what's behind the curtain type of thing. So it was a really fun event. I got to see a lot of pictures and hear a lot of stories from that. Mazda's continued support of the college track program, and that's in the Los Angeles area. That equips students confronting systemic barriers to earn a bachelor's degree through the program's 10-year commitment to each student from 9th grade through college graduation. There's also a public-private partnership between Nissan and the state of Tennessee. And here, current and prospective workers can take classes such as automotive technology, machine tool technology, and apply all of these skills and learn in Nissan's facilities or with other employers in the region. So another example of it's not just about what they are looking to bring to their own companies, but what they can contribute to society. And then lastly, a good example about reskilling too. Subaru of Indiana's Advanced Manufacturing Maintenance Training Program, I mentioned maintenance workers, reskills current employees through a 2-year program that combines classes through Vincennes University with on-the-job training. So these examples, in addition to the longstanding partnerships that Japanese brand automakers have with 4 universities to cultivate a pipeline for engineers, mechanical, and increasingly electrical and software engineers into the manufacturing R&D facilities are important. And also what I've just described, it's again, we mentioned the term long-term. So these are all certainly long-term initiatives. And again, it strengthens that U.S. competitiveness.
Terrific. It's interesting that you mentioned sort of the investments and sort of partnerships with local universities, because that sort of leads me to this one question, which, look, I think it's very impressive that in just slightly over 40 years, Japanese branded automakers have expanded their presence to 27 U.S. states, right? In just 4 decades. But that does bring up the question of, as we're seeing more foreign direct investment coming into the United States, not just from Japan but from other countries, how they decide to choose where they make their investments, right? So, what are the factors that shape Japanese branded automakers to either enter in new communities or to build out existing locations where they already have a presence, say Marysville or Georgetown or Smyrna?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think, well, first of all, location is a big deal. You need to assess your location, infrastructure, and also the assessment of the existing supplier base and manufacturing base, and then also in whether you're able to scale that up. If it's not there, you need to develop it. Mm-hmm. But also workforce, and also you need to take a look at what academic institutions are in the area. So partnering, that's an important part of expanding, and well, important part of going into community. Frankly, when Japanese brand automakers are ready to expand, they've already made those partnerships with community stakeholders, including academic institutions, which help in preparing for expansion.
Okay, fair enough. Well, just to stick with the issue of sort of like more community-based or sort of more localized approaches, I think one thing that has been increasingly evident is that there's a greater emphasis, both by Japanese government and also Japanese businesses, on expanding their outreach to sort of more regionally, more locally, on the state level in municipalities within the United States. And so what are some of the perspectives that, what are some of the approaches that the Japanese automotive industry has undertaken when doing these initiatives in the U.S.? And what are some of the lessons that it might be able to share with others as they try to sort of emulate what you guys have accomplished?
So it's very important when you go into communities, you really need to get to know the community stakeholders. That means really listening to see what's the makeup of the community, what are their needs. For example, what do the local schools look like? Do they need extra support for STEM and STEAM programs? Are there any vulnerable environments in the area that you're entering, meaning plants and animals? You need to keep that in mind when preserving that area? Are there challenges that companies can help support a future employee face in order to focus on the work at hand? For example, childcare and other challenges that come up. So a hallmark of Japanese brand automakers' good quality FDI is how much they take stock in being good neighbors and corporate citizens. As I mentioned, the $1 billion in charitable contributions since 1957 and $150 million just last year, this all goes to that phrase of betterment of society. And some examples of that, just briefly, is Nissan's 18 plus years of partnership with Habitat for Humanity. That's not only a lot of money, but that's a lot of, and there are many hours that employees dedicate to this cause. Mazda's 19th consecutive year of support for the Second Harvest Food Bank that addresses food scarcity in Southern California. If you've been to a national park, then you might know about Subaru has been recognized as the National Park Foundation's largest corporate sponsor, providing support since 2013. Mitsubishi Motors Community Utility Vehicle Program, where the company offers vehicle loans to nonprofit organizations. So as I mentioned, there's also volunteerism that companies' members do, and that's another way that employees can stay connected and demonstrate their personal investment in their communities. So these are the many ways that these automakers have really built roots in the communities across the U.S. for the long term. So again, key phrase being long term.
Very well understood. I'm glad you brought up the issue about Subaru working with national parks because that brings into mind this great advertisement I remember seeing during my research back in like the early 70s during the environmental sort of the strong environmentalism push era during the early 70s. And Nissan had ran an ad of buy a Nissan, test drive a Nissan, we'll plant a tree. And so I think it's really demonstrative of sort of how Japanese automakers are oftentimes very attuned to sort of the current cultural or sort of political zeitgeist within the United States. And very smooth transition to this question then, which is essentially, Japanese automakers have plenty of experience of how business interacts with politics, economics, and diplomacy. So how are automakers adapting to this new environment of economic security and industrial policy, both within the United States, within Japan, globally? How are Japanese automakers adapting to these circumstances?
So I think here we'll focus here on the U.S. One of the most significant pieces of economic security and industrial policy is, love it or hate it, the Inflation Reduction Act. It's a strong signal as to the industries and technologies that this administration believes will help strengthen the U.S. economy in the long run. It's a massive undertaking to transition various industries. And as we noted in our comments to the Section 30D Clean Vehicle tax credits, shifting complex automotive supply chains takes time. And speaking of diplomacy, you need to rely on friends and allies. It's key for a sustainable transition.
Okay, but just as a quick follow-up, how does JAMA engage with its members on U.S. regulatory, trade, and industrial policy issues? Like what is the nature of the engagement between JAMA and your member companies? If you can just speak a little bit about that. Because we're always curious as to exactly how JAMA engages with its members.
Right, so I think it's important to remember as JAMA, we represent the Japan-based companies, right? So there are many local auto associations, not many, well, there's two and one major one. So, they have different scopes really, so they're major in their own ways, auto associations. And so they have, and all these members have their own DC offices, right? So since we have that, what we call Japan hat on, we do need to be mindful of that. So we are looking to have policy conversation with stakeholders since we're talking about this impact on the U.S. Quite a bit. But the conversation about anything in terms of advocacy and outside the stakeholder education space is really within the local offices and local trade associations.
Fair enough. Great. I do have one more question I'd like to ask you, but I'm going to save it for later.
Okay.
For now, I'd like to sort of, given how we have a packed house today, why don't we open it up to the audience for questions, if that's okay?
Yes, of course.
And I guess let's go with the gentleman in the back. If you could, please state your name and your affiliation before your question.
Hi, I'm Kun Chan-jung. I'm an undergraduate student at Georgetown. So I have a question about South Korean auto industry in the United States, which is also substantial. So many Korean Americans living in the United States are unwilling to purchase Japanese cars because of historic Korea-Japan rivalry. But what if I told you, amid the good Korea-Japan relations right now, could there be the case that Korean automobile industry could also cooperate with the Japanese automobile industry in the United States? Thank you.
So I think the question was how do Korean companies cooperate with Japanese companies in the U.S.? Did I get that right? So first of all, I think we have to go back to this is an incredibly competitive market. So there's here in DC, we have colleagues in all of the offices, so it's a more collegial feel, but it is a competitive market here, and those feelings may exist, but also and I have years in basically the U.S. auto market, the industry here, right? And so when I say that the consumers have really, they have demands, they're looking at their pocketbook, right? They're looking at content, they're looking at safety, they're looking at reliability. So these are the things that, look and feel. Mm-hmm. So that's why Japanese brand automakers have spent and invested so much time really getting to know the U.S. customer. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers the answer of working together, but it's I think the focus is working on making sure the U.S. consumer is getting what they need.
And if I may just add to that, I think also the fact that I think some of the examples you gave earlier, right, in terms of Honda's cooperation with LG over batteries, I think that is a testament to the fact that, especially in this very challenging economic security environment that we're facing globally, there needs to be greater cooperation when possible. I mean, Japanese automakers and Korean automakers will obviously have to compete, but the key thing is that they both are fair competitors, and when possible, they have opportunities to cooperate with each other in terms of building the kind of markets that they want to compete in. And then I will say that I was just in Seoul about 2.5 weeks ago, and a number of Japanese branded cars. I mean, certainly there's plenty of Kias and Hyundais. I mean, obviously in Seoul, but there was plenty of Japanese branded automobiles as well. So certainly, I don't think it's a sort of like we only drive Korean. I think ultimately the consumer chooses what they want. So the gentleman with the light blue is high first. Yeah.
Ken, just my teacher at Major Document in Japan.
I'm sorry. If you could take the microphone, please.
What is JAMA doing to restore the historic balance between U.S. production in Japan? Until 1939, 95% of all Japanese cars were produced in Osaka, Yokohama, and Tokyo from the big three and exported throughout Asia. And now it's down to about 4%. The Ford pulled out in 2016. I think last year it was about 24,000. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but Nissan was started by an American named William Gorham. So what is JAMA doing to try and help restore that historic balance?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So, it's JAMA supports not only fair markets, but also fair regulatory systems as well that all need to adhere to. So, producing in, we'll take what I said earlier, building where you sell. So that's one of the mentalities that some of our automakers really follow here in the U.S. So I can't speak on behalf of those automakers and why exactly they pulled out, but JAMA looks to ensure a fair system to compete in and to build in. So that's essentially what they are doing, and they continue to do.
So can you, consider some in the future incorporating something to help restore the balance so that it's a little more than 4%? Is there any possibility that you could assist in trying to restore that historic balance?
Well, I personally cannot speak to that. I'm sorry, we are the U.S. branch office, so we are focused more on really the stakeholder education of what Japanese brand automakers provide and their impact here in the U.S., but I do appreciate the question.
Great. Klaus?
Yeah, thanks. Klaus Lars from the
Oh,
Wilson Center.
Klaus, please take the microphone.
Thanks. Klaus Lars from the Wilson Center. Thanks very much for your very interesting remarks. I think the elephant in the room is, of course, China. And in Europe, as you know, the automakers, the governments are all totally panicked about the coming wave of Chinese EV vehicles. What is the situation in Japan and regarding Japanese automakers, both in Japan and in the United States? Thanks.
Well, I think these are two very different markets, and so I'll speak to specifically U.S. market. So, it's a complicated relationship, right? So, Chinese market is important for many automakers, but at the same time, it's important that JAMA continues to support policies that make for a fair market for automakers. So I think the focus of, I know the focus of our automakers is really on the consumers and what they want here. And so that's where the investment has gone. So yes, a lot is being said, you're right, a lot is being written, but the work to focus on the U.S., not only the U.S. consumer, the U.S. worker, that continues on.
Anybody else? Gentleman in the back.
Thank you. My name is Ken Scabe from Marubeni Corporation. I think another elephant in the room is Trump. So, and what would be your biggest concern if the Trump will take the White House? And so he has already mentioned the new tariff policy, like a 10% universal tariff. And also in 2026, so USMCA will be negotiate to renew. So, and I guess the Japanese automaker has a lot of supply chain between the United States and Mexico. So what would be your biggest concern under Trump 2.0?
Well, that question was packed full of things. So I do think it's, first of all, let's go back to this legacy of 40 plus years. Over 40 plus years, there have been a lot of elections. And our members have weathered every transition. And as I mentioned, all of our, the plans and initiatives, the programs we're talking about in these communities, they will continue on. So yes, like every other industry and every other company, we're looking at the election and what that could bring. It's a campaign, a lot is said, so we'll have to see what actually plays out. And then we need to assess from there. So I think we'll have to see how this election goes. It's a little bit early to get into that, I think.
Great. Very diplomatic response to a question that I'm sure you certainly do not get from Tokyo at all, ever. And certainly I have not answered at all in the past calendar year either.
I did go to school of foreign service.
Very slick, very slick. Wonderful. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. I'd be very interested.
Please state your name and affiliation.
Oh,
please.
Alan Loeb, I'm an attorney. I'd be very interested in finding out the extent to which Japanese regulatory agencies and American regulatory agencies are cooperating. We would all like to see a level playing field and everybody on the same basis. And so to what extent are the official agencies collaborating to produce standards in a new technological environment, and what are the industries doing to help facilitate that?
Thank you for the question. So I'm sorry, but I'm not privy to what these regulatory agencies are doing to work with each other. But
There's the second part of the question.
Second part of the question. Well, since I'm not privy to what these regulatory agencies are doing to work together, it's really hard for me to speak to what the Japanese brand automakers are doing on either side to help. But of course, Japanese brand automakers, regardless of what side of the ocean you're on, they are good corporate citizens, so they do want to help shape the regulatory environment that they will be playing in. It certainly is a factor when you operate in any country, right? So if there are opportunities to feed into that conversation, they will, whether it's individually or through associations, local associations.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you for your time. I'm Sam Tran from the East West Center. I was wondering what are some of the factors within the products of the JAMA consortiums that really distinct them from the offerings from, say, Korea or US or European auto manufacturers in the US market? If I look for a next car and I want to buy a car from JAMA, what should be the reasons for me to do so, essentially?
Right off the top of my head, they're fun to drive. You know, it's probably many of the companies have, you know, racing departments to them, and they have that spirit. So, but they're also very well known as reliable, dependable. So these are, as I mentioned, that U.S. consumer really cares about those things. So, and also and value. But I think for further information, you probably need to go to the individual members, and they have good budgets for their marketing department. So, but on the whole, those are some of the characteristics that come to mind.
And certainly, if and when I ever get my book published, you should read it, and then you'll also see the historical American consumer's perspective towards Japanese cars and sort of what they value in their purchases. So yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So okay. Why don't we take that question?
Hi there, Dominic Pino, National Review. Despite this very positive relationship between Japan and the United States on manufacturing automobiles, we've heard in recent months about Nippon Steel's plan to purchase U.S. steel, and that being presented as a national security concern by a lot of politicians. How are you concerned about that sort of skepticism between the U.S.-Japan relationship spreading into automobiles, and how have automakers dealt with concerns on national security grounds, if any, in the past?
So I'll speak to this more from our perspective. So this is a business deal in the process of being evaluated on its merits, like all business deals are, right? But this is a very large one. It involves a very symbolic industry for the U.S. and during an election year. But from our perspective, this evaluation should not call into question the vast positive impact that FDI has had on communities across the U.S., especially when that source of FDI is from an allied nation who shares many common interests and goals. So, and in fact, I mean, we just got finished with we just completed the 10th annual Select USA conference, right? It's all about attracting FDI. This current administration, former administrations have all had open investment policies as well. So, as I've discussed today, the billions of dollars of steadily increasing cumulative FDI by our members here in the U.S., they've uplifted and enriched communities and strengthened youth workforce for today and tomorrow. So this is really the power of good quality FDI. So we want to make sure that we hope there is no spillover, because there really shouldn't be. The impact is there.
And I'll just add to that, that if you're concerned about the Nippon Steel issue, both from national security grounds as well as FDI grounds and so on and so forth, Hudson, particularly myself and also some of my colleagues have written extensively on the Nippon Steel issue. So I would request that you sort of take a look at some of the work that we've done here as well. I will take the moderator's prerogative and ask the last question unless there are any other pressing questions. Japanese companies, Japanese automakers have been in the US for over 40 years. Tell us where Japanese automakers will be in the US in 40 years from now.
So, again, can't speak more about this legacy, right?
Yeah.
It's, as I mentioned, weathered a lot of change. And regardless of any shifts in politics, we covered that, right? Economics, consumer preferences also shifting. They're really invested here for the long haul. So they'll continue to adapt, innovate, and contribute meaningfully to the U.S. auto industry, economy, and communities. What I think you'll see is that these roots that I keep talking about, that Japanese-ran automakers have cultivated, they're going to grow stronger, they're going to grow deeper, and they will expand.
Great. I think that's a wonderful way to conclude. Thank you again for sharing the impact report with us and also talking about sort of the deep engagement that between our two countries that Japanese automakers have helped facilitate. And I hope everyone will join me in thanking Anita for sharing her time with us.